Everybody, welcome into a Stanley Cup winning edition of Territory Talk, the official podcast of the Florida Panthers, presented as always by Baptist Health, the official sports medicine provider of the Florida Panthers. Back-to-back Stanley Cups for the Florida Panthers. Rarefied air. Already was, because the Panthers had made 3 straight Cup finals, but now winning back-to-back Cups, not something that happens every single day. We've hammered it home a lot. Enjoy this for all it's worth. We're in the golden age of Panthers hockey at this moment, but the Panthers taking care of Edmonton for the second straight year, this time in 6 games, and Jameson Olive, alongside, I should introduce myself too, Doug Plagens here with you. A no-doubter in Game 6 for the Florida Panthers. And I felt like the Matthew Tkachuk goal was probably the backbreaker, but it was a classic example, once again, of a Panthers team that goes out series after series saying that they're prepared for 7 and they're geared up for 7 and they train all season for series that go long. And I think what we saw in this one, Jameson, was a case of the Panthers, and we've seen this in multiple instances over the last few years. The Panthers just squeezed the life out of the Edmonton Oilers to the point where once games 5 and 6 came around, it just didn't feel like Edmonton had much left in the tank. The Panthers had run them into the ground. That's what this Panthers team does. And, well, back-to-back Stanley Cups as a result.
Yeah, Doug, like we always say, and then we won the Stanley Cup again. No, just obviously an incredible game and an incredible series for the Panthers. Shout out to the players, the coaches, the staffs, the trainers, the fans. Everyone brought it this series. Ownership, obviously, got to give the Violas a ton of love too. But now that I'm 12 hours removed from it or whatever it is, my headache is pretty much gone at this point, which is lovely. Better than last year. I don't think this series was close, Doug. This was, a David and Goliath thing, except Goliath wins. It's just, that's kind of what this felt like. And to me, obviously, the number that's going around that's standing out is the Panthers led for 255 minutes and 49 seconds in this series, an NHL record. Longest the team's ever led in a cup final, and we didn't even need to go to 7 games. The only 2 wins the Oilers had, they had to come back from multi-goal deficits. I think that's more on the Panthers than the Oilers, honestly. And it came down, Doug, once again to what you and I talked about going into the series and going into every series, these playoffs and going into the playoffs as a whole, is the Panthers are just deeper than everyone else. And you can pretend sometimes that your team is also deep, but then you see the Panthers and you say, oh, no, okay, that's deep. We're not deep. And when I look at the Oilers this year, Doug, to me, it's very kind of Emperor's New Clothes, where the king is McDavid and Draisaitl, and they're walking around buck naked. And everyone's saying, wow, look at your beautiful depth. Look at that. Look at your robes and your clothes. And it's so awesome. It's not. It's just McDavid and Draisaitl. And, you and I thought maybe early on in the series, maybe they were a little deeper than last year. But now that we saw it for 6 games, they were deeper last year with, Fogle and McLeod and Holloway and Broberg and those guys. Those guys made them a better team than they were this year. They were more dangerous. They were faster. They were quicker. And, one of the things, we got a lot of stuff to talk about for after the game, but one of the things that really stood out to me that, Sam Bennett talked about, Matthew Tkachuk talked about, is they're not a team, the Panthers are, where one guy has to get it done. Not even 2 guys. Anyone can get it done. Anyone can be the hero on this team. Going to that cup final, Doug, that Game 6, in your mind, did you say, oh, Sam Reinhart's going to go off? And if the Panthers are going to win this game, Sam Reinhart has to go off and score 4 goals. No. Maybe it was going to be the Lundy game. Maybe it was going to be the Lusty game. Maybe Matthew Tkachuk was going to have a hat trick. Maybe the fourth line we're going to get 2 greasy ones. Maybe Brad Marchand was going to stay hot and have a couple goals. It's just anyone can do it. And I just want to go down the list here real quick of just the point totals here for the Panthers in the Cup final. Reinhart 10 points, Verhaeghe 9 points, Tkachuk 7 points, Marchand 6 points, Bennett 6 points, Luostarinen 6 points, Lundell 6 points. So many guys had a hand. And that's just the point getters. I'm not even talking about the guys that didn't get points that played exceptional defensively, like Gustav Forsling and Tomas Nosek and all those guys. It was just basically, once again, for the second straight year, Panthers depth versus McDavid and Draisaitl. And Doug, once again, depth wins out. And I'm curious where the Oilers go from here. I'm curious if the NHL as a whole, if anyone learns any lessons from this and what the Panthers are doing, just with how dominant that they looked in this series.
The Panthers have the deepest roster, and I think that got to be the biggest thing on my mind throughout the playoff run. I think as soon as the Panthers beat Tampa Bay, and certainly after they outlasted Toronto in 7 games, I'm looking at this Panthers group, and I know we're looking at it from a Panthers side of things, but I'm looking at this Panthers team and thinking there are other good teams out there. There are other contenders out there, but who realistically can I look at and say they could beat the Panthers 4 times in 7 games? And I just didn't see anybody else that was capable of that. And the Edmonton Oilers in 35 years, somebody's going to be looking at a Wikipedia page of past Stanley Cup winners, and they're going to go back in the archives and they're going to look at this series and see it on the nice grid display if people are still using Wikipedia 35 years from now. And they're going to see that in 2025, the Panthers beat the Oilers in 6. And you'll look at it and you'll think, oh, it went to 6 games. It must have had its moments both ways. And through the first 2 games, people did look at this saying, oh, this could be one of the great Stanley Cup finals of our time. This could be one of the great series that the league has ever seen. You look at it, and at this point, it's easy to say at this stage, it's easy to say because the Panthers won the Stanley Cup for a second straight year. But to be quite honest, Edmonton was pretty lucky to get this thing to 6 games. The way that it looks now, when you break it all down and you let the dust settle a little bit, the Panthers dominated this series, and Edmonton's 2 wins both came in overtime. One of them came in a game where the Panthers uncharacteristically had a lead and let it get away, and Edmonton came back and won the hockey game, and full credit to them. But in looking back at game 4, that might have been where Edmonton emptied the tank because they couldn't recover after that game. They taxed some of their guys with some pretty heavy workloads, quick turnaround. Game 5, Panthers won in Edmonton. And you felt like game 6 going in was going to be a no-doubter, and it ended up being a no-doubter. And getting back to the point you made, going into the game, could Sam Reinhart blow up for 4 goals? Absolutely. He scored 57 2 seasons ago. Now we have to say 2 seasons ago. He scored 57 goals. He's a perennial 30, 35 goal guy who had a 57 goal season once upon a time and certainly is going to sniff 40, 45, maybe even 50 again. We'll just have to wait and see. But could he have scored 4 last night? Absolutely. And he did. But he could have also just been, he could have scored 1. The Panthers could have had goals from 4 other goal scorers. They're that deep of an attack. And you look at the game last night, it was just a full example as to just how deep this team is, how many different ways that they can beat you. And the Panthers don't lean on one guy. And as the series went along, maybe it worked in the Western Conference. And of course, I know the Zach Hyman injury was a blow to the Edmonton Oilers. But once the Edmonton Oilers got to the Cup final, they just didn't have the horses to keep up with the Panthers in this series. The Panthers were too deep for them. It showed as the series went along, and you wondered if it would be the case. You wondered if things changed for Edmonton, but it still felt like the further it went and the more desperate they got, it went right back to the same game plan they've been using for a number of years, and that was throw the 2 big guys out there and just hope it works. And huge credit to Alexander Barkov because he's the common denominator here for why the Panthers are so many times able to shut down some of these big guns on the opposing side. You don't get bigger guns than Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, and the Panthers, led by number 16, kept them in check as much as humanly possible in that series.
100%, and Gus Forsling and Aaron Ekblad on that top D pair as well, usually teaming up with that top line of Verhaeghe, Barkov, and Reinhart. 2 Selke guys there, a 3-time winner on that line. Not bad when you need to shut down the opponent's best. So that's obviously really impressive, Doug. But another stat for me, just from Game 6, scoring chances allowed by the Panthers by period: 3, 3, 5. Oilers were never in the game. Panthers didn't let them in the game. Just incredible. And we talked about it before, but the starts. Panthers had at least 2 goals in every first period of the series. And this is a team that super uncharacteristically in this series did let the lead get away from them twice, but it wasn't going to happen 4 times. They know if they get the lead in all those games, they're going to win the series. And you did feel, one, with how that first Sam Reinhart goal was scored, just the razzle dazzle of it, picking Bouchard's pocket, maneuvering around Echo. And that's Edmonton's top D pair. You're making look silly. And to score there, you kind of felt like, just that and what that meant and, who was involved in that play, that might have been enough just right there. But then for Matthew Tkachuk to get that late one, the Oilers break the Cardinals sin, letting in a goal in the final minute.
That was the backbreaker.
That felt like the backbreaker. You're right. So, and it just a lot of crazy things had to happen in that game. Super impressive, like we said, for the Panthers. And as we talk about depth, Doug, and we kind of transition here to Conn Smythe as well. Sam Bennett obviously went to the Conn Smythe. And well-deserved 15 goals, most road goals ever in a playoff run. was fantastic in this series. The physical presence, the menace that he brings to the ice, so huge. But to me, if I was doing Conn Smythe, I wish you could just give it to a line, because I would give it to the entire third line of the Panthers.
They changed every series.
Everything. And you and I talked about that heading into the series. The ultimate X factor, we said, is going to be that third line, and it was. So pat ourselves on the back there a little bit. But
nobody had an answer for that. Nobody's
Nobody.
third line could produce at the level that those guys could, and it was a matchup nightmare for opposing coaches, because if they tried to keep their top players away from Barkov or from the Bennett line, what are you going to do? Throw them at the Lundell line? It's not going to work. It didn't work. Look at the plus minus that Marchand and Lundell specifically ended up with in this playoff run. I know plus minus, some people think it might be a little bit of an antiquated stat, but when it is so far off to one extreme, it tells you a story. That line was virtually unbeatable in the playoffs, and Eetu Luostarinen made a great play last night too to set up what would be the game-winning goal.
And Doug, who in this entire postseason has more even strength points than Eetu Luostarinen?
I saw this tweeted out. It's the two-headed monster on the Edmonton side. That was it.
That's it. That is it. So what a breakout series for Lusty and Lundy. They're both young guys still. Like, it's incredible how good they are and how good they're going to continue to get. So that's impressive. But Doug, I mentioned Sam Bennett winning the Conn Smythe, and we'll get to his press conference here in a second. But just first, your thoughts on Benny, getting that recognition. And I talked to him after the game about it, but he says it. And like any guy on that team, there's probably 10 guys on that team that would have had an argument for Conn Smythe. And he got to just kind of be the guy to represent everyone and just kind of what that meant to him. So deserved. And another guy that Bill Zito kind of picked up off the pile and said, you know what, we just think there's something more to you, brought you to Florida, and now you're a two-time champion Conn Smythe winner.
Well, fitting, and I said this during the postgame last night, fitting that a guy who's carried around the moniker Playoff Sam since his time with the Calgary Flames, fitting that he now has his name etched on the Conn Smythe Trophy alongside many of the great playoff performers of all time. So huge congratulations to him. Well-deserved. Went to Sam Bennett. Could have gone to Brad Marchand, and nobody would have questioned it one bit. Could have gone to Sergei Bobrovsky, as we talked about. And I think that deserves, I know only one man gets the award, but I do think that we need to get Sergei Bobrovsky in the conversation a little bit more here. And I know the award's already been handed out, but just to illustrate further his stamp on this whole thing. And I did a hit on Sirius XM NHL radio earlier today with Mick Kern, and he was banging the drum for Sergei Bobrovsky as well. And exactly what I said. Obviously, Sam Bennett, well-deserved. Historic playoff run, 15 goals. He deserves the Conn Smythe Trophy. Fitting that playoff Sam has it. Could have gone to Brad Marchand too. But Sergei Bobrovsky in his future Hall of Fame career, the best playoff statistically maybe that he's ever had. The .914 save percentage he had on this playoff run was only a tick below the .915 that he had in the 22-23 run that just fell short against Vegas. The 2.20 goals against average was the best by a decently wide margin when we're comparing year-over-year goals against average of a guy who has really good numbers in that department. The 2.20 was the best playoff goals against average that he's had in his career. So you could absolutely make the case that this was the best playoff run statistically that Sergei Bobrovsky's ever had. He was already a future Hall of Famer. He just further cements his legacy there. A lot of different names that could have been thrown in the ring as far as Conn Smythe candidates. Still, though, looking for information and clarity as to whether or not Conn Smythe was a big ice cream consumer.
And Doug, we'll get back to ice cream because obviously ice cream was a big part of this series for a lot of different reasons. But first, let's get to Sam Bennett's post-game podium here, sitting right next to his Conn Smythe Trophy. Still kind of in a little bit of disbelief, you could tell, but just talking about everything, the series, the team, the trophies, just so much good stuff from number 9 here.
Panthers forward and Conn Smythe Trophy winner Sam Bennett. Take your questions. We'll start left side, front row.
Well, Benny, you said on the ice that anyone could be sitting there with that trophy right now, but what does it mean to maybe be the guy that gets to speak for that group and speak for all the depth by being the winner tonight?
Yeah, it's a huge honor. I mean, the depth of this team is just, it's remarkable. The amount of guys that stepped up this year and had incredible years, incredible playoff runs. It truly could have went to anyone. I mean, I'm so grateful. It's such a huge honor, but I truly mean that. It could have went to anyone, and couldn't have done it without my teammates. They were unbelievable, and their reactions, they meant the world to me.
Stay in that same row.
Sam, what is it about this team? And obviously you guys have some great players, but everyone's talking about Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. But you guys as a team have done this consistently for 3 years. What's allowed you guys as a group to do that? You mix in new players and still have the same recipe for success?
I mean, it starts with the culture here. There's a way that we do things here, and it's not easy. We don't play an easy style of hockey. It demands a lot out of you, but I think every single guy's bought into it, but once the new guys come in, they instantly bought into this, what we do here, and the commitment to being great, to winning. Every single guy just really bought into that, and I mean, it starts with the culture, but the character of the guys. I think that's why we're able to do this.
Right side, third row.
Sam, Brad could have maybe had that trophy. What happens a few months ago when that trade goes down on the group text or in the meal room, and how did he ingratiate himself to get to the point to be such a contributor?
Yeah, he as soon as he got traded here, he chirped me in the group chat instantly for our history and the last playoffs, but what he's meant to this team, I truly don't think we win a Stanley Cup without him. His leadership, his will to win, it's inspiring. And I was telling him before every game, we're going to follow you, and we did. He was a dog every night, and he for sure could have won this. One of this trophy. He's a better player and person than I ever knew, and I'm grateful that I got to play with him.
Right side, fourth row.
Congratulations, Sam. The last 2 games, you guys didn't give him an inch out there, and I was just wondering, did a switch get flipped for you guys for 5 and 6 as far as just how tight you guys were defensively against them?
Yeah, I don't know if it was a switch, but I thought we played pretty well majority of the games. There's a couple overtime games that could have went either way, and but yeah, it just shows the character. Like, guys were willing to do whatever it takes to shut them down, and some guys played some big minutes, shutting down two of the best players in the world. And that's not an easy job by any means. So it really took everyone, and everyone bought in.
Right side, second row.
It's so hard to win one. What does it mean that this team has won back to back, and where do you think it puts you in history?
Yeah, I haven't thought that far ahead, but it's harder than I ever imagined to win the Stanley Cup once, and twice was even harder. So, it's a huge honor to be a part of this group. I'm not going to take it for granted. I love being here, and I love this team. It's a remarkable team to be a part of, just from the staff to the players to the management, the owner, the coaches. Like, truly everyone is world class here, and this is a fun team to be a part of.
Right side, second row.
Sam, looking back to a couple of years ago, if you had told yourself when you got traded here, you'd be sitting here, 2 Stanley Cups, a Conn Smythe Trophy, just would you have believed that, and what would you have told yourself, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, I always believed in myself. I always knew I could be more than I was when I first got traded. But I mean, it's all a dream, I guess, until you actually do it. And I don't think I knew how difficult it would be and how much work it would take. But certainly, I couldn't have done it. I mean, my whole life switched when I got traded here, and I'm super grateful to be here. So, yeah, I don't take that for granted.
Left side, front row.
Benny, speaking of dreams, last year was Captain Crunch out of the Stanley Cup, lifelong dream. Going back to that again this year, do you have a different plan coming up?
I actually haven't thought about that, but yeah, I mean, we'll probably do that. We'll probably have the Captain Crunch, and maybe we'll eat some other stuff out of it too. We'll see.
Left side, second row.
Sam, most championship teams have a tough stretch where it seems like they have to really overcome some like big hill or mountain. What part of the season was that for you guys? Was it the Toronto series or some point in the regular season?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of moments that were difficult this year. It felt like a long year after going 2 years playing to the end of June, and yeah, a lot of ups and downs throughout the year. The Toronto series being down 2 was it was a tough moment, but I mean, the belief in this locker room, there was never a moment where we were like, this is too much for us, or we're in over our heads. There's just so much belief in that locker room, so much experience, and everyone truly believed that we could win a Stanley Cup from day one again. And it took a lot, but you need that belief, and we had it.
So, Doug, you hear from Benny. We can expect some more Captain Crunch out of the Cup this year, which is always good to know. You know what? For all the stuff that Brad Marchand's done with Dairy Queen, Benny needs to get some love from Captain Crunch, because he's doing some PR for the Cap these days. He's on the crew.
We need to find out if he likes peanut butter crunch, if he likes crunch berries, if he likes, remember the limited time only Oops All Berries? Remember that one?
I loved Oops All Berries.
I could see you being an Oops All Berries guy.
Oops, Panthers won again. That's what this year is called.
Oops, I did it again.
Yes, I want to get to the DQ stuff, because this is gonna be a weird thing where you're not gonna be able to talk about this year's Panther run without the Dairy Queen, and obviously Brad Marchand was the leader of that and a big part of it. I should say co-leader. Nate Schmidt, from what I hear, also played a big role in that. I want to talk more about Schmidt in a second as well. But it's just another one of those things that I think really showcases why the Panthers are a little bit different, is just their ability to stay loose, their ability to not take things too seriously. I mean, you look at the two sides of the media coin, and not just this series, but other series as well. You go into the other locker room and you say, like, oh, what's it going to take to get this done? Or, oh, is this a legacy game for you guys? Or, oh, it's kind of serious. A lot of poking and prodding, a lot of trying to stuff that probably does get in guys' heads. And then you go to Florida's locker room and everyone's like, oh, Brad, where'd you get a Dairy Queen?
Yeah. What kind of blizzard was that?
Was it the cookie dough? Was it the Oreos? Like that, those are the hard-hitting questions. And the funny thing is even if you try to get a hard-hitting question in, like, oh, Brad, how are you going to handle, McDavid tonight? It's just like, oh, well, first I got to go to Dairy Queen, and then I'll talk to you guys after that. Like,
it's not to say people aren't doing their jobs and asking questions, because the X's and O's are being tackled in these conversations. That is all being talked about.
But the Panthers have this lightheartedness to always fall back on. And they always have another story. It's never just what's going on the ice with the Panthers. There's always that plus one. And, and I think that just means so much to always kind of have everything not just be hockey. It's also something to always highlight the team and the group and what they're doing. I mean, going throughout the final too, just a ton of talk about poker on the plane. No one talked about more poker than the Panthers. And did they still talk about shutting down McDavid? Did they still talk about, their starts and things like that? Of course they did, but they talked about other stuff as well. And I think that does matter, Doug. I think you got to have Two sides.
Having something else to suck up some of that oxygen is important. The Panthers, let's not forget, and we can tell these stories now because the big story, ended up having a happy ending, but there was a moment in the series where Edmonton tied the series at 2, and the Panthers had a lead in that game. Uncharacteristically, the Oilers came back and were able to win a game in overtime in Sunrise, get it back to Edmonton 2-2, and there was no doom and gloom coming from the Panthers, and they were still, all right, we're going to bounce back. Guys went to Dairy Queen. They were spotted there in Edmonton the night before Game 5, and they clearly know how to compartmentalize these things. And they know how to, I guess, keep their eye on the ball and on the big prize, knowing that you don't lose the Stanley Cup Final because one game went a little bit sideways for you. And then they came back, and what a response. Not only did they respond in Game 5, but they put on back-to-back clinics in Games 5 and 6 and ultimately won the series and won the Stanley Cup. It was an impressive finish to the series, a response from, again, a game that didn't go their way back in Game 4, and it just showed this team's ability to hit a reset button when they need to as well.
Yeah, and just to go through some individuals now, Doug, is, obviously Sasha Barkov already going to the Hall of Fame, but his resume now, just the Bing and the Clancy and the 3 Selkies and the 2 cups, maybe some Olympic accolades here coming up next year. We'll see. But just what he's been able to do for this team and just what he means as the leader. We talk about how this team has so many personalities and so many stars and so many guys that, like we say, every guy is important. Every guy can be the hero, but to have Barkey be the one central force, he's the perfect captain for this team. He's soft-spoken when he needs to be. He's loud when he needs to be. He's the best player on the ice every single night, even when this team doesn't have their game. So just to see him get the cup again, I saw, obviously, the photos already flying around this morning. I saw him, the Starbucks at the Westin on A1A. He brought the cup in there before, I guess, they hit up Elbow Room. Just to see him not only just have success, but to kind of finally relax. Obviously, Barkey carries the weight of the world on his shoulders. We've seen it 2 years in a row now. When the Panthers win that cup, you see him kind of go, oh, like, I did it. We did it. Like, I'm the captain and we won. Good. We did it. All right. Fun. Let's have fun. So that's huge. And just going through a couple of things that I just picked up post-game last night. I spent a lot of time talking to a lot of different guys because when you win the cup, everyone's excited. Everyone just wants to talk. And talk to Nate Schmidt for a little bit. And what a great story Nate Schmidt was. Comes to the Panthers for less than he could have got elsewhere. He took basically the minimum here to play for the Panthers because, as Paul Maurice said, he wanted to get his game back. And he comes into South Florida, has a good regular season, healthy scratch, Doug. First game of the regular season. Let's not forget, he was not in the lineup to start. He had to get back in there, earn that spot, and then he has a great cup final. And not just that, I mean, starting the postseason, those big goals he had in the Tampa series, he just immediately became a big part of this team. And, we talk about depth again. When I look at the rosters, if I look at the Oilers, after Ekholm and Bouchard, they'd probably love Nate Schmidt over most of their other guys. And for the Panthers, he's a guy on the minimum on their bottom pair. And
Uvis Balinskis would have been playing every night.
He would have. And Uvis is fantastic. Uvis is an Olympian. He's fantastic.
Yes.
And he's just, he's another guy where he literally said, I'm coming to the Panthers because I want to win. And I asked him after, I was like, well, according to plan, it's like, what does it feel like? And he got emotional. He just said, like, you do bet on yourself and you do put yourself in these situations. And, you and I have had a chance to see his young kid around the rink a lot. And he said, throughout these playoffs, he's been typing up emails during series and during big moments and just kind of putting his thoughts, kind of letters to his kid that one day his kid's going to read. And he said, I can't wait for this last letter and what that's going to mean. So what a great story Nate Schmidt's been. I've seen on the videos, he's cutting loose down on A1A right now. So good for him. He's earned it. But circling back, Doug, on that thought is, when the cup gets handed out after the game, it goes from Barkov to Nate Schmidt. And that is so cool. And then it just goes to all the other first timers. And, Nosek, Vanacek, Greer, Boquist, Samo got it. That
Seth
was so
Jones.
cool to see. Seth Jones gets it, who, we'll talk about him on another episode if you look ahead to the future, but the Panthers having him for the next few years is awesome. But just that element of the culture as well. Is there's so many guys that are dying to touch that cup. But they said, guys, we had our moment last year. We're going to have it again in a few seconds. It's about these guys. Like, we know how that felt. Let's give those guys that feeling. Just incredible, Doug, as we talk about culture. And there's a couple more guys and conversations I want to talk about, but just your thoughts on just that like we talk, every guy has a job and they do their job.
And that's getting to be a big part of the conversation here is the order the cup got handed off, because I know a lot of people like to think about, oh, who's Barkov going to hand it to first? Where's it going to go? That's always a big part of the conversation, and people like to participate in that guessing game. And I thought last night that was one of the coolest things of the entire experience, was seeing Barkov hand it straight to Nate Schmidt, and then all the first-timers, as you mentioned, got it. But that is an exhibit right there, a look into what that dressing room is all about. And it does start reverting our conversation back to Alexander Barkov, where we started this whole thing. And I think maybe because he is a quieter guy, maybe his abilities as a captain aren't talked about enough. But when you look at the definition of a lead by example type of guy, anybody goes into that Panthers dressing room, anybody gets into that lineup, and they are asked to handle some kind of role, some kind of task within the game, they're going to do it. Because the guy wearing number 16 with the C on the front of his jersey, who has all-world skill and is a future Hall of Famer, is not above any responsibility or task that could be asked. He's almost as if he's a superstar with a fourth-line mentality, because he'll go out and do anything that he needs to do for the team, even though he may be the best. He's maybe a top 5 all-around player in the entire world, and I've been mentioning it for a long time here, banging the drum that I know maybe people see explosiveness and McDavid and McKinnon and names like that are the first ones that come to mind, but I don't think there's a player in the National Hockey League that impacts every shift in more different ways than Alexander Barkov does. We saw it during this series, and I'm going to get to a series of statistics here in just a moment, but we saw it in this series. There are times where, Bill Lindsay and I would look at each other during an intermission off the air and say, oh, McDavid really didn't get a chance to break free in that period, did he? He didn't really get a chance to get going. And when he's not able to get going, he's not really doing a whole lot. We saw him blow a coverage completely last night on the second goal that wound up being the game winner. That was partially his defensive responsibility there, but they were so geared toward offense at that point in time, hoping to break something the other way, that it backfired on them. Alexander Barkov never has lapses like that in a game. And now I want to get to a stat, Jameson. Johnny Lazarus does good work covering the New York Rangers, but tweeted earlier today, I believe it was earlier today, getting my times, and yep, it was earlier today, over the last 2 playoffs against the Panthers, last 2 playoff years, McDavid 4 goals in 13 games, Kucherov no goals in 10 games, Matthews 1 goal in 7 games, Pasternak 1 goal in 6 games, Panarin 1 goal in 6 games. The Panthers have kept some of the most gifted offensive players in the National Hockey League completely in check over these last 2 playoff runs, and that all starts with Barkov.
And I'm glad you're giving him credit, because a lot of the things you'll read or the podcast you'll listen to, a lot of the time will say, well, man, those guys just didn't have it that series, or they never got to their game that series. All those things happen because of what the Panthers do.
Yeah, Leon Draisaitl said it before Game 6 after the morning skate. He said, we haven't played our best game yet. Well, 2 things. First thing that comes to my mind is, well, let's just looking at the watch. Game 6, Leon, when's it going to happen? The other thing is that's indirectly a compliment to the Florida Panthers for not allowing them to ever get to their game. It wasn't a matter of Edmonton not going out there and trying. They were trying. Panthers just had an answer for everything they threw at them.
Yeah. And like we said, they just weren't deep enough to deal with that. So a couple more things I want to mention. We mentioned Jesper Boquist, a first-time winner. I had a great hug with Jesper after the game. And it was great to see it from him, because talking to Ekblad earlier, he said, this feels so normal and real, which is, he said, bleeping and insane that it does just feel normal. And to have a guy like Jesper there that was here, it was great that Abo got to come back and share that with Jabo. We talk about culture, that's another thing. Like Adam Boquist just didn't find a home here. So the Panthers, were like, all right, we're not going to hold you hostage. You go to waivers, you get picked up by the Islanders. You know what? He got a contract. He's got a job again next year. He's in a good spot for his career. They did a good thing for him. And then he comes back here and still celebrates with the Panthers and his brother. So awesome. Love to see that. And then I think my favorite interaction from the night was, I'm sure some fans remember after the Cup win last year, like Barkey, Mikkola, Lusti, and Lundy called in to like that Finnish radio station when they were all kind of 3 sheets to the wind. And it was hilarious. So when I saw Lucy after, I was like, oh, you calling the radio station later? He goes, yeah. And then we got to call the president.
The president sat behind me at the Global Series.
I
remember the president.
The amount of President Stubb, the president of
Yes.
Finland, who you and I have both seen a lot recently, the amount of times he's spent talking to the Florida Panthers, specifically those 4 guys recently, is hilarious. Like, they're all going to be like on his cabinet one day. Like, they're all off to bigger and better things after hockey because they are just so entwined with Finnish politics at this point. And you know what? They're probably going to get invited back to his house again this offseason, this summer. But I just thought that was hilarious. It was such like a, yeah, and then we got to call the president. And, after that, maybe I'll take a shower. Just like,
Well, that goes back. And then I met the president of the United States again.
President Stubb's a great guy. We love President Stubb. But no, that was just so cool. And just seeing all the guys just cutting loose and partying. And, Doug, it's going to be another long summer, another fun summer. The Cup's going to travel the world again.
Well, another short summer also.
Yeah. A short summer, but long. It's a weird way to look at it. Short, but long. But, as you kind of look ahead now, we'll talk about this on a later episode, but obviously Panthers have some decisions to make with a couple of free agents. Ekblad after the game said he's looking forward to trying to win it again next year. So what does that mean? I don't know. You never know. Sam Bennett just talked about how much he loves this team and loves these guys. And, this is home. So what does that mean? I don't know. We'll find out here in a little bit. Free agency coming up on July 1. Brad Marchand obviously earned himself probably a massive contract. But does he want to stay with the Panthers? I don't know. We talked about this before. And Nate Schmidt said it before Game 6, the morning of, when I asked him about just like the feeling of the game, he's like, this is why you come here. Not a single person that is a professional hockey player is watching the Panthers win that game last night and saying, I don't want to play for them. Like, everyone at this point would love to play for the Florida Panthers, the team, the culture, the location, the facilities, everything. And, I will close here because obviously you can't talk Panthers these days in certain areas without also hearing about taxes, Doug. But I
was hoping you were going to bring this up.
But I just want to say, because it's specifically coming out of Toronto from what I've seen. And when I say Toronto, I mean like just a good amount of fans there on social media and things like that, and a couple of reporters. But, you look at the taxes, obviously, which are marginal, especially when you consider factoring in everything. The fact that people just want to come here because it's sunny year round. People like the beach. It's the only team you can play for where you're that close to the beach. I know you got LA and stuff, but it's a different animal here in the Atlantic on the East Coast. But I remember when Matt Duchene went to Nashville because he liked country music, and no one said we gotta do something about that. But as I look about the teams that complain about things like the income tax, all those teams have at least 1 or 2 bad contracts that had nothing to do with taxes that are weighing your team down. You just overpaid on a guy that had nothing to do with anything. And you look at the Oilers; they got a couple tough contracts over there that had nothing to do with taxes. And I just think it's one of those things where taxes are also not the reason why McDavid was shut down in this series. It's not the reason why Austin Matthews didn't play well against the Panthers in round 2. But I just think it's something that won't go away for a little bit, just because I feel like until the Leafs find some success, I feel like it's going to keep coming up. And especially if the Panthers keep winning, which it looks like they're going to do, which is great for us. But I just thought it was funny how that's kind of still out there, even after all this.
The fact that Florida is a tax-free state didn't help the Panthers in the 2000s. The Lightning have had plenty of down years too.
And people forget the Panthers used to have to overpay people to come play here. They did not get any team-friendly deals.
Remember how long it took to finally have the Panthers and Lightning have a playoff series against each other, because they were never both playoff teams at the same time. And if taxes were the main factor, then that would have been they would have been playing every year in the playoffs, but that wasn't the case. And these conversations I'm going to point out 2 things here. One that has been pointed out a lot, but taxes aren't what made Bill Zito decide to get Gus Forsling for nothing from Carolina. Taxes aren't what led to the Panthers to Bill Zito pulling the trigger on brilliant trades to get Matthew Tkachuk here and Sam Reinhart here and Sam Bennett here and Brandon Montour here, even though he wasn't a part of this group. That was still a great trade that was a part of the 2024 Cup win and led to that. They were able to find Carter Verhaeghe, who was looking for, he was a guy in Tampa Bay that wasn't getting the responsibility or maybe the minutes that a guy like him could really thrive in. Comes to the Panthers, his game goes to new heights. Guys came here because they wanted to win. How many times, Jameson, did you hear guys talk about whether it was Nate Schmidt, Tomas Nosek, Jesper Boquist, Brad Marchand? All these guys said at different times for different reasons. The main reason they wanted to be a Florida Panther was because this team was a contender that had a chance to win a Stanley Cup. That's why they wanted to be a Florida Panther. And getting back to it, I know everybody loves to point to this tax thing, and the Florida teams are both having runs of success, and this was never a topic until these last few years. Taxes didn't stop LA from winning 2 cups. It didn't stop the Blackhawks from winning 3 cups not that long ago. Didn't stop Boston for having a run of playoff success that was well over a decade in length. So there are teams that have been able to get a good thing going and have plenty of success, even though they're not in a tax-free state. It's all about building a culture that guys want to go to and something that guys want to be a part of. And that starts at the top with the Viola family and the ownership, Bill Zito, the coaching staff, the leadership in the dressing room. That's why this all works. Of course, people love the facilities. That's been attractive. That makes guys want to stay. It gets guys talking. It gets guys saying they want to come and be a Florida Panther. The fact that they can win, the fact that they have nice amenities here, the sunshine and the palm trees certainly doesn't hurt. But guess what? There are teams that have won Stanley Cups in places where they have snow. That has happened before, and it will happen again someday. Shocked. Trust me, it will happen again.
Well, it's funny, Doug, too, is like we talk about also just smart people at the top and competent hockey decisions, a lot of which you just mentioned about the moves Bill made. But, going through the news the last couple days here has been the Sabres thinking about moving JJ Peterka. It's like, okay, great. You're just trading Sam Reinhart again. Like, that's not anything to do with taxes. That's just a bad decision. So, there's so many factors that come together, like I said. But the fact of the matter is, Doug, the Panthers have built a culture, an organization, a powerhouse franchise, a destination franchise. They still haven't announced Jim Gregory, but you hope Bill Zito wins it. Not that he needs it, not that he has any space in his trophy case these days, but it'd just be nice because he deserves it. But just an incredible run here, Doug, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon. And we'll talk more about the road ahead on our next episode and things like Dynasty, Panthers era, things like that, compare them to some other teams here recently. But as we close out here, Doug, we do have the good news. The parade is set. The parade will be Sunday, noon, A1A, 10% precipitation last I checked. So I think this might be more of a wear your sunscreen rather than wear a poncho. So knock on wood, as fun as last year's was, it'd be nice to see a sunny one this time.
I still have that $10 bill from last year's parade that was in my wallet that turned the color of my wallet because I was so soaked and it took on all the dye from my black wallet. I can't even deposit it into an ATM, so I'm keeping it as a relic from the parade. Good thing it was only a 10.
Yes.
It would have been a shame to lose out on 100 like that.
I would have tried to salvage the 100. But it's going to be awesome. It's going to be, everything I used to say once in a lifetime doesn't work anymore because now I'm like, well, it's going to be once in every 2 years. Like, this may not happen again till next year, guys. So you better come out to the parade. But it's going to be a blast. And also, Doug, obviously for fans in South Florida, you are officially on red alert. Be aware the cup is around. Like we said, it's at the beach right now. But as we saw last year, it's going to show up a ton of random places. So always look your best just in case you run into Lord Stanley over the next couple weeks here in South Florida. You never know. He's everywhere.
Yep, he can show up anywhere around town. So keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye out for us. Don't be a stranger. I know it's the off season. Say hello if you see us. Engage us on the social channels. Questions, concerns, inquiries, statements, whatever you want to send it. Well, I hope it's not a statement, credit card statement. That could be, we're not going to pay that for you. But we'll handle, if you want to make a statement, say something to us, we'll handle that. Everybody enjoy this. The Panthers are back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. This is not something that happens very often. So soak it all in, take it all in for all it's worth. And we will have lots more coming your way here from Territory Talk over the course of the off season. Not much time to think about it. I know this cup win was a week earlier than last year's cup win, so it's not quite the chaotic
extended off season this year for us.
It's not quite the chaotic sprint right into the parade to the draft to the parade, free agency, and the whole thing happening in one fell swoop like that. But this year we are going to have lots to cover here in and around the Florida Panthers in the next week and a half, 2 weeks, as far as the draft, the start of free agency, just looking back at the season that was, everything that goes along with it. So again, I hope everybody out there is enjoying this. Take it all in. For Jameson Olive, I'm Doug Plagens. This has been a Stanley Cup winning edition of the Territory Talk podcast, the official podcast of the Florida Panthers, presented as always by Baptist Health, the official sports medicine provider of the Florida Panthers. We will talk to you next time.